Hello everyone, my name is Pilar Llanes Vicioso and the title of my presentation is Guillermo del Toro's The Shape of Water, Latin American Male Otherness as a Cold War Asset and Threat to the United States of America. So the contents of my presentation are the following. First, I will speak briefly about the film itself. Then I'll move on to the social and political context of the 1960s in the US and Latin America. Next, I'll address masculinity and otherness. And finally, I'll go over the conclusion of my research. So, The Shape of Water was directed by Guillermo del Toro and it was released in December 2017. The story takes place in Baltimore, Maryland in 1962 in a laboratory that is run by the US government where they're carrying out experiments in order to defeat the Soviet Union since they are immersed in the Cold War. In the photograph, we can see the two protagonists. So we have Eliza, who works as a cleaner in this laboratory, and the character is mute, which means that she can only communicate through sign language. And this is something that just actually helps her get closer to the amphibian man, who is the other protagonist of the film. And the amphibian man was captured by the US Army in the Amazon and was brought to this laboratory where they want to experiment on him as they believe that he can be used as a weapon against the Soviet Union. So now I would like to talk about the social and political context in the 1960s, since this is the decade in which the film, Guillermo del Toro's film, takes place. So obviously, when we talk about the 1960s, we have to bear in mind several factors, such as the protests that were taking place all throughout the country against war, especially against the Vietnam War. Also, the civil rights protests and demonstrations by African Americans. There were also protests by the gay liberation movement in order to bring about a change in American society. And also, the second wave of feminism was really starting to make itself heard. And just like all the other movements, such as the civil rights and the gay liberation movement, feminism also sought to make a fairer and better American society. So this is the social context that politicians are having to live with and experience in this decade, in a decade where they're not only worried about making sure that the capitalist economic system succeeds, but also that there is not a nuclear holocaust that would destroy the world. So this struggle between the USA and the Soviet Union was based on several crucial points that led to a possible destruction and disintegration of society. So the Cold War wasn't just about protecting, about each nation protecting itself and its beliefs and economic system, but it was about expansion as well. So whoever won this war would actually be able to expand its economic system and ideology and view of the world across the planet. So moving on to the next point of my presentation, I would like to also talk about the social and political context in Latin America in the 1960s. So First of all, we have to bear in mind that the success of the Cuban Revolution really encouraged other Latin American countries to start or continue with their own rebellions. The 60s were a decade where many coups took place throughout Latin American countries, meaning that the government became dictatorial, many of them being military dictatorships. This gave way to the appearance of guerrillas who would fight against these dictatorial governments and dictators. And their ideology was very much left thinking ideology, or what is called a new left thinking ideology. And political violence was also seen as a necessary evil in order to fight these military dictatorships, which, as we know now, were extremely destructive and aggressive towards the civilian population. Now, I would like to address masculinity and otherness and integrate the social and political context of the 1960s in both the US and Latin America in this analysis. So, in this photograph, we can see the amphibian man who is faced with Strickland, who is a colonel of the US Army. So Strickland works as the antagonist of the film. He really becomes the evil character in it. Strickland initially appears to be a very confident man and safe in his knowledge that he is superior to the amphibian man, and that is until the amphibian man manages to physically attack him, and this attack results in Strickland losing two fingers from his hand. I don't know if you can appreciate it in the photograph, but his hand has a bandage around it. And these fingers are later reattached to his hand, but this event, this attack by the amphibian man, really throws Strickland off balance. So his ability to remain calm and um, collected in the face of the amphibian man comes to an end. And after the attack, Strickland really begins to lose his grip on himself and becomes this unpredictable, violent character who just seems to be moved by rage and a thirst for revenge against the amphibian man. So what we see here really it's a clash of two different performances of masculinity. So on the one hand, we have Strickland's, which initially represents that white hegemonic masculinity that would have ruled and, as we can see, still continues to rule the US. And on the other hand, we find the amphibian man who comes from the Amazon and looks like a man, but he isn't completely human. Then at the same time, he's extremely strong physically, but he also has healing powers, which is what motivates the American army to literally kidnap him and take him out of the Amazon and into this American laboratory where they expect to exploit his powers, this sort of magical powers, in order to defeat the Soviets. So when Strickland and the amphibian man clash, especially after Strickland loses his fingers in this physical fight with the amphibian, what we have is a confrontation of two performances of masculinities, but also we have a confrontation of two completely different cultures and visions of the world, where the amphibian would represent the Latin American um, side of the struggle between the US and Latin American countries. In terms of analyzing the amphibian as this threat not only to Strickland but to the US, we can say that this is a position in which the amphibian stops being the object that the Americans see him as, and actually has agency. He's able to act as a subject, and he does that when he attacks Strickland, which, far from seeming like an animal or a beast that's attacking a human, what we can see is that the one who truly comes across as a beast is Strickland. And that just shows even more when Strickland begins to display very unsettling behavior after the attack. So, to conclude, I would just like to highlight the main points of this presentation. So, in Guillermo del Toro's film, we have the opportunity to watch how two performances of masculinities are intertwined in a very close way with the social and political unrest of the Cold War era, especially in the 1960s, given what was happening across the US and in Latin American countries. And this clash between the white hegemonic masculinity and the otherness in which Latin American masculinity and femininity, not just men, but obviously also women, are forced to live in culturally and socially, um, really has moved on to a different level after Donald Trump became the president for the second time. And we can see that now with the mass deportations that are taking place in the United States of America. So, to sum up and as a conclusion, I would just like to point out the fact that art, popular culture, such as film in this case, is a very powerful vehicle and a conversation starter to address issues that might seem like are in the past, but unfortunately, as it is in this case, they are very much still in the present. Thank you so much for your time and attention.